Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we're exploring one of the most famous personal development books ever written, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. For decades, this book has helped millions of people improve their communication skills, build stronger relationships, and better understand human nature. Its lessons are simple, practical, and just as relevant today as they were when the book was first published. In this video, we'll take a journey through the book's most important ideas and discover how small changes in the way we treat others can have a huge impact on our personal and professional lives. So let's begin. Imagine for a moment that you are having a disagreement with someone. Maybe it is a friend, a family member, a coworker, or even a stranger online. You know you are right. Your facts are correct, your arguments are strong, and you are ready to prove your point. So you explain why the other person is wrong. You show them the evidence. You make your case as clearly as possible. But instead of agreeing with you, they become defensive. They argue even more strongly. The conversation becomes tense, and by the end, nobody has changed their mind. This situation happens every day. It happens in homes, offices, schools, and businesses all over the world. And it raises an important question. If people are rational, why don't facts automatically change their minds? This is where the journey of how to win friends and influence people begins. Dale Carnegie believed that one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that human beings are driven mainly by logic. We like to think of ourselves as reasonable and objective. We tell ourselves that our decisions are based on facts. But when you look closely at how people behave, a different picture appears. People are emotional creatures first and logical creatures second. Most of us want to feel respected. We want to feel important. We want others to appreciate us and understand us. These emotional needs are often stronger than our desire to be correct. Because of this, when someone attacks our opinions, criticizes our actions, or makes us feel small, we naturally resist. The book encourages us to see people differently. Instead of viewing them as problems to solve, we should see them as human beings with feelings, fears, hopes, and desires. This small shift in perspective changes everything. Think about how often people criticize others. Parents criticize their children. Managers criticize employees. Friends criticize friends. Sometimes the criticism is harsh, and sometimes it is gentle. Yet in many cases, the result is the same. The person receiving the criticism feels hurt or defensive. Carnegie does not argue that people never make mistakes. Of course they do. Everyone does. The point is that criticism is rarely the best way to inspire change. Imagine a gardener trying to help a plant grow. The gardener does not stand over the plant shouting at it because it is not growing fast enough. Instead, the gardener provides sunlight, water, and the right conditions for growth. Human relationships work in a similar way. People often grow more through encouragement than through blame. This idea may sound simple, but it is surprisingly difficult to practice. When someone disappoints us, our first instinct is often to point out what they did wrong. We want them to understand our frustration. We want them to recognize their mistake. Yet the book suggests that there is a more effective path. Instead of asking, why did this person do something so foolish? Carnegie encourages us to ask, what might have led them to act this way? That question creates understanding. When we begin to understand others, we become less judgmental. We realize that every person sees the world through their own experiences. What appears obvious to us may not be obvious to them. What seems like laziness to one person may actually be discouragement. What looks like stubbornness may come from fear. This does not mean we must agree with everyone. It simply means we should try to understand before we judge. Another powerful idea introduced early in the book is that people have a deep desire to feel important. In fact, Carnegie believed this desire is one of the strongest motivations in human nature. Consider how people behave when they receive recognition. A student who is praised for good work often becomes more motivated. An employee who feels appreciated usually works with greater enthusiasm. A friend who feels valued becomes more loyal. The opposite is also true. When people feel ignored, they often withdraw. When they feel unimportant, they lose motivation. When they feel invisible, they search for attention elsewhere. This helps explain why appreciation is so powerful. Many people assume that appreciation means giving compliments all the time. But Carnegie makes an important distinction. Genuine appreciation is not the same as flattery. Flattery is often selfish. It is praise given with the hope of getting something in return. Genuine appreciation comes from honestly recognizing something good in another person. People are surprisingly good at sensing the difference. Think about someone who sincerely thanks you for helping them. Their words feel meaningful because they come from a place of honesty. Now compare that with someone who praises you excessively while clearly trying to gain a favor. The feeling is completely different. Because everyone wants to feel valued, sincere appreciation can have an enormous impact. Sometimes a few honest words can stay with a person for years. Now let's talk about part 2. Why people like some people instantly. Have you ever met someone for the first time and immediately felt comfortable around them? You may not have known much about them. They may not have been the smartest person in the room, the richest, or even the most talented. Yet there was something about them that made you enjoy their company. A short conversation felt natural. Being around them felt easy. Now think about the opposite experience. Have you ever met someone who spent the entire conversation talking about themselves? Someone who seemed uninterested in anything you had to say. Even if they were successful or knowledgeable, being around them probably felt exhausting. This difference reveals an important truth about human relationships. People are not attracted to us because we constantly talk about ourselves. They are attracted to us because of how we make them feel. As Dale Carnegie continues his exploration of human nature, he begins to focus on a question that many people secretly ask themselves. Why do some people naturally attract friends wherever they go? The answer, according to the book, has very little to do with luck. It is usually the result of habits, simple habits that make others feel comfortable, respected, and valued. One of the most important of these habits is showing genuine interest in other people. At first, this idea sounds almost too simple. Most people assume that if they want others to like them, they need to become more impressive. They need better stories, better achievements, or a more interesting personality. But Carnegie argues that this approach is backwards. The people who are most liked are often the people who are most interested in others. Think about the conversations you enjoy the most. Chances are, they are not always the conversations where someone is trying to impress you. More often, they are the conversations where someone listens carefully, asks thoughtful questions, and seems genuinely curious about your experiences. When someone gives you that kind of attention, you feel important. You feel respected. You feel that what you say matters. And that feeling creates connection. Many people underestimate the power of simple curiosity. They enter conversations thinking about what they are going to say next instead of paying attention to what is being said. As a result, they miss opportunities to build real relationships. The book encourages us to slow down and become genuinely interested in the lives of others. Not because it is a strategy or a trick, but because people can usually sense authenticity. They know when someone truly cares and when someone is only pretending. This idea naturally leads to another lesson that Carnegie emphasizes throughout the book. People love hearing their own names. At first glance, this might seem like a small detail. But when you think about it, a person's name is deeply connected to their identity. It is one of the first things they learn about themselves. It follows them throughout their entire life. When someone remembers your name after meeting you once, it sends a powerful message. It says, "You mattered enough for me to remember." Unfortunately, many people forget names almost immediately because they are not fully present when introductions happen. Their minds are somewhere else. They are thinking about themselves, about what to say next, or about the impression they are making. Carnegie suggests something different. When meeting someone, give them your full attention. Listen carefully. Repeat their name naturally during the conversation. Treat it as something important, because to them, it is. As relationships grow, another principle becomes increasingly important: listening. Most people believe they are good listeners. Yet if we're honest, many of us spend more time waiting for our turn to speak than actually listening. True listening requires patience. It requires setting aside your own thoughts for a moment and focusing completely on the other person. This is not always easy. Sometimes we are excited to share our own experiences. Sometimes we want to offer advice immediately. Sometimes we think we already know what the other person is going to say. But genuine listening is different. It means allowing people the space to express themselves fully. It means paying attention not only to their words, but also to the emotions behind those words. When people feel heard, something remarkable happens. They begin to trust us. Trust is one of the foundations of every meaningful relationship. Without it, friendships remain shallow. Teams become ineffective. Families struggle to communicate. And trust often begins with something as simple as listening. As Carnegie explores these ideas, he also highlights the importance of maintaining a positive attitude toward others. This does not mean pretending that life is perfect. It does not mean ignoring problems. Rather, it means APPR. Now let's talk about Part 3, Influence Without Pressure. As we move deeper into the ideas of how to win friends and influence people, something interesting begins to appear. At first, the book seems to be about making people like you, listening more, smiling more, showing interest. But slowly, a bigger question starts to form. What if you need to change someone's mind? What if you disagree with someone? What if you need to convince a colleague, a friend, or even a family member about something important? Most people handle these situations in the same way. They argue. They present facts. They try to prove they are right. And when the other person resists, they push harder. But Carnegie points out something very important. When people feel attacked, they stop listening. Even if your argument is correct, even if your logic is perfect, the moment the other person feels defeated or embarrassed, the conversation stops being productive. Instead of moving closer, both sides move further apart. This is why the book introduces a completely different approach to influence. It is not based on pressure. It is not based on winning arguments. It is based on understanding human emotion. Because people do not change their minds just because they are wrong. They change when they feel respected. One of the most powerful ideas in this part of the book is the importance of avoiding direct conflict whenever possible. At first, this may sound unusual. Many of us believe that if someone is wrong, we should correct them immediately. We think honesty means pointing out mistakes clearly and directly. But Carnegie suggests a different path. He explains that even when you are right, proving someone else wrong can often be the worst possible strategy. Why? Because when someone is proven wrong in public or in a direct confrontation, they do not feel educated. They feel humiliated. And when people feel humiliated, they rarely accept new ideas. Instead, they defend their position even more strongly. Think about a simple example. Imagine someone says something incorrect in a conversation. You quickly respond, "That's not true. You are wrong." What happens next? Most likely, the person will not say, "Oh yes, you are right." Instead, they will try to defend themselves, even if deep down they might have been unsure. Now imagine a different response. Instead of correcting them directly, you say something like, "I used to think that too, but I read something interesting about it recently." The tone changes. The tension disappears. The conversation continues without conflict. This small shift in communication style is at the heart of influence. It is not about hiding the truth. It is about delivering it in a way that others can actually accept. Another key idea in this section is learning how to see things from the other person's perspective. This may sound simple, but it is one of the hardest skills to develop. When we are in disagreement with someone, we are usually focused on our own point of view. We think about why we are right. We think about what the other person is missing. We prepare our next argument while they are still speaking. But Carnegie encourages something different. He asks us to pause and ask, why does this person think this way? Every opinion has a reason behind it. Every belief is shaped by experience, background, and emotion. When we take the time to understand that, the conversation changes completely. Instead of two people trying to defeat each other, it becomes two people trying to understand each other. And in that environment, influence becomes possible. Another important principle is allowing others to feel ownership of ideas. People naturally support ideas that they believe are their own. Even if the idea originally came from someone else, if a person feels like they contributed to it, they become more committed to it. This is why direct commands often fail. When someone is told, "Do this," they may comply, but they rarely feel motivated. But when they feel involved in the decision, their engagement increases. For example, instead of telling a team member exactly how to solve a problem, asking for their opinion can be more effective. When they contribute to the solution, they are more likely to support it fully. This is not manipulation. It is understanding how human psychology works. People want to feel capable. They want to feel intelligent. They want to feel that their ideas matter. Another powerful lesson in this part of the book is the importance of beginning conversations with agreement rather than disagreement. When two people start from opposing positions, tension builds quickly. But when you begin by acknowledging something you agree with, the atmosphere becomes calmer. It does not mean you must agree with everything. It simply means finding common ground before discussing differences. This creates a bridge instead of a wall. Once that bridge exists, it becomes Now let's talk about the last part, part 4, the quiet power of lasting relationships. As we reach the final part of this journey through how to win friends and influence people, something important becomes clear. All the ideas we explored before, listening carefully, showing appreciation, avoiding arguments, and understanding human emotion, were never really separate lessons. They were all pointing toward one simple truth. Human relationships are not built in moments of brilliance, but in small, repeated acts of respect. In everyday life, we often think success comes from big actions, big decisions, big achievements, big conversations that change everything instantly. But when it comes to people, it rarely works like that. Relationships are shaped slowly, over time, through countless small interactions. A tone of voice, a smile, a moment of attention, a simple word of encouragement. These small things accumulate, and eventually they define how people feel about us. At the heart of this final section is a question that quietly runs through the entire book. What kind of impact do you leave on people after you are gone from a conversation? Do they feel better? Or do they feel drained? Do they feel respected? Or do they feel dismissed? Do they feel understood? Or do they feel ignored? These answers matter more than most people realize. Because in the long run, people do not remember every word you said. They remember how you made them feel. Carnegie's message becomes especially powerful here. He is not teaching us how to win in life by overpowering others. He is teaching us how to build a life where cooperation replaces conflict and where relationships become a source of strength instead of stress. One of the most important ideas in this final part is the importance of emotional consistency. People trust those who are steady. Someone who is kind one day and harsh the next creates confusion. But someone who consistently treats others with respect builds trust over time. Trust is not created in dramatic moments. It is built quietly, through repetition. Another idea is the value of humility. In many situations, people feel the need to prove themselves, to show they are smarter, more experienced, or more correct. But Carnegie suggests something different. The strongest communicators are often the most humble. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking less about yourself in every interaction. When you stop focusing on proving your value and start focusing on understanding others, conversations change naturally. People feel more relaxed around you. They feel safe expressing their thoughts. They feel that they will not be judged or attacked. And that safety is the foundation of strong relationships. As the book moves toward its conclusion, another important theme appears: forgiveness and emotional control. In life, misunderstandings are inevitable. People will disappoint you. They will say things they did not mean. They will act in ways you do not expect. The question is not whether this will happen. The question is how you respond when it does. Carnegie encourages emotional control, not suppressing feelings, but managing them wisely. When you react immediately with anger, you often create damage that is difficult to repair. But when you pause and respond calmly, you give yourself the chance to protect the relationship instead of destroying it. This ability to pause, even for a moment, can completely change the outcome of a situation. Another powerful idea is the importance of focusing on long-term relationships instead of short-term victories. Winning an argument may feel satisfying in the moment. It may feel like success. But if that victory damages a relationship, the cost is often too high. Carnegie repeatedly reminds us that relationships are more valuable than being right. Because in the end, life is not a series of isolated conversations. It is a long chain of connections. The people around you, your friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers, form the environment in which your life unfolds. If those relationships are strong, life becomes easier, richer, and more meaningful. If they are weak, even success can feel empty. As we approach the final message of the book, everything begins to connect. The smile you give to a stranger, the attention you give in a conversation, the patience you show during disagreement, the respect you offer even when you differ in opinion. All of these are not separate techniques. They are expressions of one mindset, treating people with dignity. And when you consistently treat people with dignity, something remarkable happens. You stop needing to force influence. It begins to happen naturally. People trust you more easily. They listen more openly. They respond more positively, not because you are manipulating them, but because you have created an environment where cooperation feels safe. This is the quiet power of At the end of this journey through how to win friends and influence people, one simple idea stands out above everything else. People may forget what you said, and they may forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Real influence is not about control, arguments, or winning debates. It is about understanding, respect, and genuine human connection. When you listen more, judge less, and treat others with kindness, relationships naturally become stronger and more meaningful. If there is one lesson to take from this book, it is this. When you change the way you treat people, you begin to change the quality of your entire life.